Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't leave because I didn't like the song. I thought it was fascinating. I left because I thought the mayor was on the phone. Since it's the mayoral election today, I thought I'd better answer it, even if he's not the mayor tomorrow. But it wasn't, so it's okay. And that sounds great. And actually, both of the previous two speakers talking about free access to public data, one of the great things that I think we have done as a public authority is to make all this stuff available. And people are doing fantastic things with it, far better than we'd ever do, and at somebody else's expense too, which is great. So I thought I'd give you a brief flavour for the Olympic Games. It occupies a medium-sized amount of my time when I'm not thinking about the new mayor and the investment programme, and we are less than 100 days away from it. The Olympic and Paralympic Games is, of course, the largest sporting event in the world. We were lucky enough to win in 2005. That's what I think most of the time. My friend in Paris thinks most of the time he was lucky enough that we won it. But we're making real preparations, because back in 2005, one of the issues that the International Olympic Federation said to us was that the transport system in London has to be right. So for 7 years now, we've been working to make sure it is right. And what you're about to hear in a few minutes is a distillation of a slide pack, which is 140 slides, most of them maps actually, so it's not that bad. I can do that in 18 minutes, but you don't get much out of it if I do it. So there's about 12 slides and I'll do it in about 10 minutes. But first, actually, here's a video because the Games is all about sport, and sport is about sporting people. And here's what I show to my staff and my audiences about what sports people say about the importance of transport.
I really love London, and I think London's one of the greatest cities in the whole world. We are going to have the whole universe, even people from space, if they could watch, will be watching London 2012. So we've got to get it right.
The success of the Games will be down to, London Transport, about how people's experience of those games are. And that starts with being able to get to those venues.
As an athlete, you want the transport system working properly, because it's one of these things that if your friends and family can't get to the venues, A, it makes you anxious, it makes them anxious, and also the stadium's not full. At the beginning of the session, if everybody's not in there, or at the end of the session, people have got to leave early because they're worried about getting home again, it does play on your mind.
Speaking to some of the guys in my team who competed in Atlanta, they said the traffic was a nightmare. They said the organisation of transport was terrible, and it was so bad, the basketball team got to the final of the Paralympics and their driver got lost taking them to the final. They were 45 minutes late to the biggest game of their lives.
I remember in Barcelona for one of the heats that there was a problem, and the stadium was half empty, and you're sort of looking around, hoping that you'll see Union Jacks, hoping that you'd see familiar faces, hoping that you'd have the support. And often, if that comes down to people not being able to get to those venues because they've been held up in some ways, as an athlete, you need that cheering on. You need people to be out there.
All of you guys are extremely important in making the transport system work perfectly and smoothly. I think the best way to look at it for me, or the comparison I would make, is the comparison of a team. You guys are a team, and in order for a team to be effective, every single person has to be working together in harmony.
Yes, there will always be things that go wrong, but you learn from those mistakes. With sport, you have injuries, you have setbacks, sessions haven't gone quite so well, but that's the chance to be able to learn and make you that better person when you're delivering it at the end of the day.
I drew my strength from wanting to be the best I could. It was about putting on a good show. It was about always turning up at the start line in the best shape I could be. And knowing that you have ups and downs along the way, that you have great days and you have days that are pretty tough. It's knowing that every single thing you do, every training session that you do, contributes towards the end.
The whole world will be watching London, and this is your opportunity to show that the London transport system works efficiently. It is the bloodline of London, and you should be proud of it.
It's crucial, it's essential that we get things running smoothly. And so we can set an example to the rest of the world, show them that we're great, and show them how it's supposed to be done.
It's going to be really, really busy, and there's going to be lots of pressure, but also it's going to be an amazing experience, and just enjoy it and be really proud that whatever you're doing is contributing to showing the world that we can put on an amazing Olympics and Paralympics.
So, I employ 27,000 people. We've shown about 22,000 of them that video. We've taken the same 22,000 around the Olympic Park. I've shown that to people, management, supervisors and staff of the dozen or 15 or so partner organisations who are going to deliver transport for the Games. Put like that, it's the hell of a challenge. It could make us very proud, but we've got to do well. So the rest of this, I'm going to tell you a bit about what we've done, and also a bit about a couple of really major outcomes, different outcomes, some investment outcomes that might be useful both for us and for the rest of the world. The first thing to say, I would do this in order of the investment and then the roads and then the public transport network. But actually I'll put this slide in first because it does show you a bit. This is central London and London just to the east. The east is obviously on the right of the slide. And one of the reasons that this slide is in here first is to show you that unlike many Olympic Games in developed cities, this Olympic Games is in the centre of the city. It's in the centre of a medieval city. It's not on the outskirts. The Olympic Park was a wasteland of derelict industrial land, but it's only 10 or 15 minutes from central London, and some of the events are in central London themselves, including the road events, including beach volleyball, if you think that's a sport, or maybe it's a spectator. Maybe it's a spectator event with a bit of sport thrown in, and the archery and so on. And if you look on the right-hand side at the bottom, you'll see Greenwich Park for the equestrian events and so forth. So this is a Games within a developed city, within an old developed city. And one of our huge challenges is to shoehorn all of the Olympic traffic, all of the athletes, all of the Olympic family, and all the spectators in a public transport Games, because that's what we advertise it as into an old historic city. We have to have an Olympic route network. You have to promise the IOC an Olympic route network and deliver one. It doesn't have to be a fast road network, but it has to be one that guarantees journey times after the terrible experiences of Atlanta. So what we've done is to take the 175 kilometres of the Olympic route network, which connects the venues, it connects the hotels, the IOC on Park Lane in the West End, and we will manage it as only we can. In Beijing, they took the 5th lane of 5-lane highways and painted Olympic symbols on them. I don't have any 5-lane highways. I'm lucky to have 2-lane highways in each direction. Many of them are 1 lane in each direction. So we're going to do it differently. We're going to use technology to alter signal timings. We're going to ban right turns because we're left-hand drive. We're going to take out parking and loading bays. We're going to close some crossings. We're going to ban roadworks. We've already stopped roadworks on this network now. And it will have a few Games lanes on it, but not many. It's not much of the network, it's 1%. But in order to do that, we've got to have some profound management of people's expectations about how to travel around in these areas, and I'm going to tell you about them. And I would say, as a proprietor of only a small amount of London's roads, but the busiest ones, that this is really quite a difficult challenge, and one that you can only approach by advanced technology. We've wired some of the traffic signals that we didn't have on computer control to computer control. I now employ people who manage parts of the road network on a dynamic basis. And with luck, and also with the management of demand and the management of people's expectations, we will deliver the Olympic family to where they need to be in the times we've guaranteed. Now, I said that first because it gives you a map. The next thing is to say that actually we've had a lot of investment. The government has put in a lot of money to things, all of which are beneficial in the longer term, because the Olympic Park is in inner London. It is already becoming the focus for economic development. We've had £6.5 billion worth of transport upgrades, including 2-line upgrades on the tube, a brand new station at King's Cross Tube, and the mainline station developed really quite substantially. Complete overhaul of Stratford, brand new services on the Docklands Light Railway and the orbital overground network. And Stratford itself, as the principal venue in the Olympic Park, is connected by 11 different rail or metro services. We're also enhancing the public transport system. We're introducing a third peak, a late night peak on the metro, on the tube, to take people home, and utilising the high-speed line from St Pancras to France for domestic services from St Pancras to Stratford in 7 minutes. I'm taking 3,000 people out of my staff who sit behind desks to stand in stations and in bus stations to help the public. All my management are expected to do that, and if you're lucky, you might even see me doing it. Why are we doing it? Well, actually, why did we want it? Why does any city want the Olympics? Well, because actually you do get an economic boost. You get an economic boost because every hotel room in London will be full for months. You get an economic boost because people come, as my colleague in Vancouver said, they don't just come if they've got tickets to the events, they come because your city is a place to come, and indeed we're devoting quite a lot of effort to contemplating how we manage the enormous numbers of people who may just come to the city in order to enjoy the atmosphere. And what that means is that the legacy is not only the capacity that's been delivered by the enormous investment for the future of East London and the future of what will be the development of the venues post the Olympics, but actually to develop the economic heart of the city and its impact on the UK economy. That means a message to business which says don't shut down during the Games, but utilise the massive commercial potential. But it also means that there will be a lot of extra journeys in the city, an extra 3 million journeys on top of the 24 million that we have by all the modes, including walking and cycling. And that demands some real management about expectation and about what people do. In terms of the road network, 70% of journeys will not be affected, and in terms of the metro, 2/3 of the journeys won't be affected. But what that means is that those other proportions, the purple proportions on these pie diagrams, will be affected, and some of them will be affected quite strongly, because if you attempt to drive through central London and you encounter the Olympic route network, if you're attempting to drive around the Olympic Park, if you're attempting to drive across southwest London on the day the cycle race goes through it, you're going to have, there's going to be quite a big impact. And if you're trying to use the Jubilee line or the Central line to Stratford for the Olympic Park on the busiest days, it's going to be very crowded. And we've had to find ourselves as a transport organisation, not just a public transport organisation, actually finding ourselves telling people about this to manage their expectations about the way that you move around London during this astonishing period. So we've been engaging, let's try that again. So we've been engaging in a massive programme of education, starting with business and now moving. This is an example of a website called getaheadofthegames.com. These are examples by day of the Olympics, because every day is different events in different places, different timings, trying to tell people, not trying but actually telling people about what's going to happen in advance of them travelling, so that they can check where they're going and decide how to go there in order to avoid the worst crushes. If you're a spectator, you'll get a free travel card for London. You'll also get access to the Spectator Journey Planner, and it will advise you to do journeys which you might not do as a Londoner, because if you come into Paddington, which is the station for the West of England in London, you might think that you should get the Bakerloo line, change at Baker Street and go to Stratford on the Jubilee line. Well, we won't advise you to do that because it's going to be very busy. We're going to advise you to go on the Hammersmith and City line, go to West Ham and walk into the Olympic Park the back way. We know that spectators will do that because they're sensible people. The bigger challenge is to get Londoners and people who live and work in London to change their journeys and change their timings. So we've been extensively advertising Get Ahead of the Games as a means of telling people beforehand. This isn't actually the first thing that we've done, though here is an example. See if I can make it work. Here is an example of the publicity that we're now using and we will use right through to the end of the Paralympic Games on the 9th of September. And the messages are simple, but not ones that a transport authority would normally say. The message is not, don't avoid London altogether, stay in bed, don't go out. That's not the message. The media sometimes characterise it as that, but they're mean and malicious, as all of the worst newspapers are. Actually, it's not that message at all. And you can see it's not that message, actually, if you look behind the 4 words in purple. The message is actually check. And the message is also this, that you can reduce the amount of travelling that you do by working from home or conference calling, or you can retime your travel. I've become a sort of local hero, because actually my advice to Londoners on the busiest days of the games in the evening is go and have a beer before you go home. In fact, I've been invited to the Parliamentary All-Party Beer Association for their annual dinner merely by my support of the brewers. But actually, it's quite a sensible piece of advice. London Bridge Station on the day of the equestrian event at Greenwich with 50,000 people is going to be very difficult to access at 6 o'clock. But if you go for a beer and actually look at the screens in the pub, by the time you've done that, it'll be 7:30 and you'll get home. You can reroute your journey by taking a less busy line, or you can cycle, or you can walk. For many journeys, it would be the quickest way to go. And actually, if you think about that message and you think about where that might take you, there's a real opportunity to persuade people actually that shorter journeys in urban areas can be taken by walking and cycling, and they'll find it quicker, easier, and actually healthier. Now, we didn't start with that information to the public. Where we started from was with business, because most businesses of any size do contingency planning. They plan for the power being off, they plan for their IT systems falling down, and here's an occasion when they need to plan for their staff finding it difficult to get to work. This is a picture of Canary Wharf, which is a new office development in East London. It's near the Olympic Park. Its principal form of public transport is the Jubilee line, which will serve the Olympic Park and Excel and a number of other Olympic venues. And there are 115,000 people who work at Canary Wharf. We've covered nearly all of them by going to their employers and saying, look, it's going to be a busy time. What can you do? Can you get people to work at home? Can you get people to go on holiday for a bit? Can you get people to work, if you're a multinational company or a UK-wide company, in other offices? And do you know what? They're quite sensible. They've all planned to do that. Can you give them breakfast and get them in early? Can you alter their shifts so that they can go home late? That isn't saying to bankers, abandon your trading floors. It's saying, take your back office people and get them to work differently or somewhere else for a few days. And do you know what? Canary Wharf as a property company have embraced this, because they've seen an opportunity for their on-site restaurants and bars and their shops to stay open later and do more business. And we've now got nearly 1 million people covered by specific travel advice for their businesses, either dealing with big businesses individually or dealing with groups of businesses like brewers and pubs and so forth, covered by this, in order to get them to think their way through a very busy time on the transport network, not to damage their business, but actually to enable their business to prosper and grow. And it's really important, because actually, as we've said, London is going to be full. The current figures say that 46% of all businesses in London expect to be able to retime, reroute, revise the mode, or reduce travel by between 10 and 30%. The other great benefit, because those I think are going to be legacy benefits, if I can get a permanent change in the way people behave at busy periods on the transport networks, whether road or rail, then actually we have the opportunity of reutilising capacity at much less cost than building new capacity. But the other great issue which we've alighted on is freight and logistics. As a transport organisation, we haven't so far had very much to do with freight and logistics, but that's changing, because our city depends on the delivery of goods, the delivery of mail, the collection of goods and mail, the delivery of all the things that you need for life in a world city. And we've found ourselves engaging with a whole variety of audiences. We and the other people involved in regulating those industries, huge amount of support from the traffic commissioners who license heavy goods vehicles and buses and coaches, involving the industries themselves. The Chief Executive of DHL Europe is the chair of my freight working group. We've written to everybody who operates freight vehicles in Britain to say it's going to be different in London. And our plan is this, which is that actually there's a lot you can do with rerouting goods and services, but you have to do it to them, because they're not bright enough to do it themselves, unlike your customers human customers. So what you have to do is to advise people if you're going to get office furniture delivered, if you need photocopier paper, it's not a very good idea to have it delivered in the Olympic fortnight. Get it delivered before, get a bit more delivered before, get less delivered before and get more delivered between the Olympics and the Paralympics. We've set out maps of the city with where the congestion is for every day of the Games and the days before it in order that people can address that. The other issue, of course, is that the city depends on perishable goods. It depends on food and drink, and actually, crucially, if you think about it, on newspapers. And the funny old thing about one of these experiences is, whilst the media are busy writing terrible stories about how the place is going to come to a standstill, actually, the same people's circulation departments have been working for months to make sure they can get the newspapers out and sell them, because that's their business. And on the day that we went to see the Evening Standard, which is London's only evening paper, and were faced by a load of incredulous journalists about whether people would plan in advance, I asked for the circulation manager, who was a rather big, rotund chap with braces, to come into the meeting, and he sat there silently. And they all said, nobody's going to do this planning, it's going to be a disaster. So I said to this chap, what are you doing? And he said, I'm planning like hell, because I've got to get 700,000 copies of my paper out, and I've got to get them to an audience that's going to need the sports results. And I think that actually says it all, which is that again, in the freight and logistics industries, you do have people who really want their businesses to succeed, and if you work with them, you can achieve it. We're looking for nighttime deliveries. We've done some experiments to show that modern goods vehicles can deliver at night with intelligent drivers and intelligent staffing. They don't cause noise. They don't cause people not to sleep at night. It is going to work. And I'm very confident, actually, that the result of this in London will not only be that the city continues with the supply of goods and services, but that we effect a permanent change in the way that people think about the distribution of goods and services. And if I can get even 5 or 10% of the city's goods delivered at night rather than during the day or in the evenings and early mornings, we will just make a fundamental change in the way that the road system works. So lastly, are we on track? Well, you can see I'm quietly confident. The IOC visited London for their final inspection back in March. They were nice to us. They didn't say everything was all right. You won't know that until the closing day of the Paralympics, and after that I'm going on holiday, probably for a month. If it doesn't go well, I might go on holiday forever. But I think it will go well, actually, because all the infrastructure is built. Not only is the stadium built, all that transport infrastructure is now built and operating. We've been working flat out on these information campaigns, both with passengers and with employers, and about goods and services, to make sure people understand what's going on. We're testing our systems, but more importantly, we're testing people's knowledge about what they think is going to happen. And what we think is that actually very, very many people do now understand this, and that actually our passengers being intelligent, our road users being intelligent, businesses wanting to succeed, will make this work in a very difficult environment. And where that leads you to say is that actually there are some real legacies to the Olympics, quite apart from the stadium and quite apart from the infrastructure, which is hopefully the behavioural change. You can come for yourselves and see whether it works in July and August and September for the Paralympics, and you can also come and have an absolutely wonderful time for the world's greatest sporting event. Thank you very much.